A good day to everyone of you who's here with us today. Bana mukulike week, mukulike byonna bye mbadde mukwasaganya. Kansubire mbu eno video ebasanga nga muli bulungi. Welcome back. Nga bwe twabasuubiza, we will be back with Zanji and we're going to try and keep it as consistent as possible. And today to come here yet again with another show. First, of course, we give thanks to Kumye n'abatukuma n'abatubezezaawo up until now, till this day, and twongera okusabira obukuumi buli omu, and yeah, twebaza byetufunye n'ebyetulifuna. But welcome to Zanji. Topic ya lero, we're going to be talking about, of course, Buganda Kontiko, and these are just reflections on Katikkiro Mayiga's 9-year tenure. And with me today, I have a guest in the studio. We're going to be with Counsel Jonathan Mwesigwa, who's going to go over most of today's topics. And without further ado, I would like to invite Counsel to come and greet the audience. We apologize for coming late. We reckon that we are later than we're supposed to be, but with time we will get better at coming on time. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Counsel Ajje Ababuzeko.
Thank you very much, Desire, for hosting me tonight in Uganda, and I think morning in the US. Greetings to all our viewers and listeners all over the globe. I'm very delighted to join you on Zanji as we reflect on Katikkiro Mayiga's 9-year tenure. It's my first time appearance on this particular show, and I'm really thrilled of Uganda, in Africa, and beyond. I look forward to engaging with all of you in your different capacities. I look forward to learning from you as well, and I look forward to sharing more information in the future. Thank you very much for hosting me.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm thrilled as well because today's topic, you're bringing in a lot of knowledge that is for the public to know but has not been extended to the public. So I'm very excited, but also humbled. It's a humble experience because it's about time that we, the masses, got familiarized with the politics that involves us but disregards our opinion. So I'm thrilled for today's show. But before we actually get into it, I'm going to ask the producer to actually then first play the first video of today that will kick off our discussion. It's going to be the appointment of now the Katikkiro of Buganda, Charles Mayiga, when he was appointed.
Olunaku olwaleero abadde Katikkiro wa Buganda Innya Jebi Walusimbi azizzayo ddamu luvannyuma lw'ekisaanyi ky'okugwako ng'aweereza Obuganda. Ddamula amukwasizza Kabaka Ronald Mwenda Mutebi II, era oluvannyuma akakasizza Minisitule by'Amawulire Charles Mayiga nga Katikkiro omupya. Mu kiwandiiko ekifulumiziddwa omuwandiisi wa Ssaabasajja Kabaka omukulu w'ekyama Peter Mpanga kitegeeza nti olunaku lw'okwazzaawo Katikkiro omuggya Ddamula mu butongole lwakulwangira ebbanga litali lyewala. Omukolo gw'okuzzaayo Ddamula gubadde mu Lubiri Emengo Mutwekobe. Innya Jebi Walusimbi yeebazizza nnyo Ssaabasajja olw'obwesige bwe yamussaamu okumulamulirako Obuganda bwatu n'eyama okusigala nga muwulize gy'ali. Bino ebimu ku byafaayo bya Katikkiro omujja omusajja Charles Mayiga azaalibwa Kasanyi Kabonera mu disitulikiti y'e Masaka bazadde be Ssaalongo Cyprian Mukasa ne Nnaalongo Rebecca Kiise Mukasa munnamateeka akulira mu kampuni ya Wool and Mayiga Advocates primary yagisomera Butale n'Enkoni eno gye yava n'agenda ku St. Louis College Kitovu n'oluvannyuma n'agenda ku St. Mary's Kisubi eno gye yava n'ayingira Makerere University n'asoma degree mu by'amateeka. Mukyala we Margaret Mayiga nga yasomera ku Trinity College Nabbi nga baagattibwa mu bufumbo obutukuvu mu 1987 bwe yali emakirire mu kubatanika ekibiina ky'abayizi ekyankubaza mbongo wakati mu mugubi kuba kyali kigaaniddwa nga balowooza nti kyabufuzi. Mu katabo ke King on the Throne Mayiga agamba nti yatandika okuweereza Obwakabaka mu 1990 yalondebwa ng'omuwandiisi ku kakiiko aka Ssaabataka Supreme Council. Mayiga agamba nti mukwano gw'enfanfa Charles Buule bwe baasomye eby'amateeka e Makerere era bwe bakola wapulira mu kampuni emu yamutemyako ku kifo kino. Mu kiseera ekyo yali akola mu kampuni y'abannamateeka ya Katende Simbi and Company Advocates era mukama we Katende yamutuma okunoonya omuntu asobola okubeera omuwandiisi w'akakiiko. Mayiga waafuukidde Katikkiro y'abadde minisitiri w'ebyobufuzi n'ensonga z'obwa kabineti mu Bwakabaka bwa Buganda. Mbokedde TV egeddeko n'abantu ne basiima Kabaka olw'okulonda Mayiga kuba muvubuka munnaabwe agenda okubalungamya.
Balonze omuntu omutuufu ekisooka muyivu n'embeera gye tuzze tumutunuulira buli kyatambuza kyonna kitera okugguka. Nsuubira nti ajja kusobola okuyamba Obuganda.
Omuntu yenna Kabaka gwatulaga yatukulembera era titulwako kuwakanya kwonna kwonna kuba kwe kusiima kwa baffe.
Kansubire nti ajja kusigala ku mulamu gw'abavubuka kuba Oweekitiibwa Peter Mayiga ebbanga lyonna abadde alwanirira abavubuka era kansubire nti ekyokumulonda ku bwa Katikkiro tujja muyigula ddamu mujja ku mulamu.
Bwega Ibrahim yakusakidde eggulu eno ku Lwabukedde TV.
So Charles Mayiga, before we get into this discussion, I just had a couple of things that you can clear up for us. So have you by any chance read, because in that video it referred to Charles Mayiga's book, King on the Throne. I did not know he actually had a book out. I'm just curious to the content, because this is all the work that he was doing before he was Katikkiro. Can you paint us a picture of Charles Mayiga before getting into office, and the persona and the work that he had done? Because that video kind of touches on it, but I think you could give us a better feel for what it is.
Well, thank you again. Yes, I have read the book, King on the Throne, the story of the restoration of the Kingdom of Buganda. It is, I think, a 2009 publication. I bought this book as an undergraduate. And in 2009, Charles Mayiga had not yet been appointed. Katikkiro was at that time, I think, Minister for Cabinet Affairs, Luchika Affairs, and spokesperson of the Kingdom of Buganda, official spokesperson of the Kingdom of Buganda. And he chronicled the events that transpired before, during, and after the coronation of Ssaabasajja Kabaka Ronald Muwenda II, Ronald Muwenda Mutebi II. So, but before Charles Peter Mayiga comes to office of the Katikkiro, he had previously been at St. Mary's College, Kisubi, which is Mark, joined Makerere University to read law. Then briefly after that, shortly after that, he worked with the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, with the DPP's office, the director of DPP, who was Mr. Macdusman Kabega. And so he started as a pupil attorney. I don't think it's that. So that's about 19, I think 87. Then after that, he had a stint in Chikubo trying to deal in groceries, probably
Mm.
because the legal profession then was not paying so much compared to today. And so he
Mm.
thought he could make some money, uh, better income, and some better income by dealing in groceries, in doing what we is often called menial jobs in Uganda. But he tried
Mm.
trade anyway. Then, as he was dealing in trade, his university buddy, Wole, who has just been referred to there, was at the time working with
Mm.
a law firm called Katende Simple and Company Advocates. So he was not amused that
Mm.
Charles Peter Mayiga, a lawyer of his pedigree, would have to do menial jobs in Chikobo. So he thought he was misplaced. And
Yeah.
at the time, Wekitiwa Katende, who's the managing partner of Katende Sempe and Company Advocates,
Mm.
was the legal advisor to the South Africa Supreme Council. And so they were looking for an
Yeah.
administrative secretary for the council, but with a legal background, because most of the matters that they were working on, insofar as the restoration of the monarchy in the Kingdom of Uganda was concerned, were
Yeah.
very touchy legally. And so Bule, who was maybe at the time an associate or a junior associate with Katende Sempebwa, thought that his friend Charles Peter Mayiga
Mm.
was suited to do the job, and so recommended him to his boss, and eventually the fellow
Yeah.
was invited for an interview. And he excelled, I think, at the interview and was granted the job. So the South Africa
Mm.
Supreme Council at the time, I think the chairman, if I correctly call to mind, was Wektigwa JP Musoke. Then he was assisted by a team of Wektigwa Grace Makula Ndugwa,
Mm.
who's the clan head of the uh, Lugave, I think, clan, the Pangolin clan.
Mm.
The other was the Reverend Danny S. Kajumba, who was acting as the Secretary General of the South Africa Supreme Council. Then Mr. Katende, who was the legal advisor of the South Africa
Mm.
Supreme Council. So, fast forward, the restoration of the monarchy happened in 1993, July 31st. And so there was reassembling of the organs of Uganda, because you remember that the
Yeah.
kingdom had been abolished in 1967 following the
Mm.
1966 crisis, constitutional crisis. And so
Mm.
those who the South Africa Supreme Council, South Africa Supreme Council transformed into the present day Luchiko, which had been previously abolished.
Mm.
Uh, so
Mm.
portfolios for people who are probably responsible for health, water and sanitation, maybe the Kabaka's travels and tours,
Mm.
women, etc.,
Yeah.
etc., who are now appointed as ministers.
I
Of the
see.
Kabaka.
So it was a mm, it was at a time
Yes,
whereby they were collecting all these former institutions, and you have people being appointed into places that,
precisely.
yes, I see.
Yes. It should be noted that
Mm.
the Kabaka ship was
Mm.
restored as an institution, as a cultural institution, constitutional with monarchy, sort of to say, but the Kabaka was a
Mm.
corporation soul. So the Kingdom of Ghana, as we knew it before
Mm.
1967, happened.
Mm.
A federal kingdom with a federal status, with
Yeah.
power to manage its internal affairs, that did not quite happen. And so this
mm,
reassembling of the Ghana organs was to give assemblies of what had transpired in 1960s, but there were limitations because of
mm,
the powers that be that dictated that it should be restored as a
mm.
corporation sole rather than a federal entity as we knew it before. And so
So
today
with
the people
no,
actually who, I beg your pardon.
so Buganda was restored with no sovereignty whatsoever, but run as a to an extent as a business organization of sorts.
Yeah, indeed, there were references, for example, that what was restored was Bianswa, wings of white ants. I mean,
Yeah.
how much do they weigh? If I give you, so there was sort of saying that's nothing compared to what we were. You know, we
Mm,
want a Kabaka with full political powers to elect his own
mm,
Katikkiro, to choose his own Katikkiro, cabinet, dictate matters within his own sphere of influence, collect
mm.
taxes, be able to negotiate with the central government over issues that could be touchy within his, sphere of influence, and so on and so
Yeah.
forth. So there was that. Some people were saying what was restored was an NGO,
Mm,
a non-government
mm,
organization.
mm.
And so today there's still people who feel that we fall short of the real thing,
Yeah.
and they're dissatisfied with the trend of things. And
Mm,
so it should also be noted that the kingdom was restored, the Kabakaship. So because you see,
mm,
there are people who say we don't have a kingdom. I want to be sensitive to
yeah.
their sentiments. So
Mm-hmm.
the Kabakaship was restored
Mm,
before the promulgation of the 1995 Constitution. Uh,
mm,
so there were laws, two laws that enabled the restoration. There was the Constitutional Amendment Statute of
mm,
1993, and then there was the Traditional Rulers and Restitution of Assets Statute, I think, which was to enable the return of the formerly expropriated properties. Uh, the
okay.
Rubiri, the Blangi, which is the administrative seat of the kingdom, the Kabaka's
Mm,
Lake, the Kasuri tombs, the Nalinyas
yeah.
palaces, the Namasoles palace, the various
Mm,
palaces of the Kabaka in Luwero, Bulemezi, in Chireka, Banda, one, Busiro, Muchadondo,
yeah.
Muchadondo.
Okay.
There's a palace at Banda, there's a palace at
Mm.
Ikoni, Masakabudu,
So
and so on and so forth. The 350
yeah.
square miles of land, which is the Kabaka's Lusuku, sort
Yeah.
of to see where he
Mm,
earns his income to take care of himself and his family and the members of the royal family.
mm,
So those were the discussions really that were ongoing, and Mr. Mayiga was the administrative secretary who enabled some of the minutes to be recorded and eventually which
mm.
were reduced in a book, King on the Throne.
Oh,
And so he became minister, and for first as a junior minister for youth,
mm,
I think. Then about 2 years later, he became a full minister. He's
mm,
still responsible for youth, and I think um, uh, cabinet. I'm not so sure, but well, his portfolios kept changing over time. But he was
mm,
mostly known for having been at least Minister for Youth, Cabinet, Luchiko Affairs,
mm.
and the official spokesperson of the Kingdom of Buganda. Yeah. At one point, he
Okay.
was dropped from cabinet and later
Mm,
returned, especially that's at the time when there were discussions on the federal, that's around 2003 to 2005, and then were
yeah.
given regional tier instead of a full federal system. And so there was a group within the Luchiko headed by Wekitiwa Dan Mulikaule that became Katikkiro, which throughout the regional tire deal, and
Yeah.
whoever supported that deal, including Katikkiro Semogerere, um, uh, Mayiga and others, except Makubi. I think
Wow.
it's only Makubi who was not thrown out. The others were all retired and probably reconsidered later for appointment again, for reappointment. Yeah, briefly, that is the journey of Mr.
Okay.
Charles. Yes.
Then I guess my next question is this terminology gets popularized, Buganda Kontiko. Can we talk a little
Yes.
bit about Buganda Kontiko? Uh, like what is not only because you've brought to the table like Charles Mayiga comes into office to serve as the Katikkiro, but he's heavily surrounded with, I see it like three things. First of all, his background as a lawyer. He's seen as someone who can then immediately he gets two things as alongside him, which is advocacy, and then the youth become a part of his his tenure and his rise, like having this whole youthful populace rally behind him. But then also he's an advocate and not only an advocate but also a spokesperson, so he takes on the spokesmanship, and out of that terminology is birthed Buganda Kontiko. So why has that served as we look at these 9 years, not only for the 9 years that they are, but from the beginning to the middle and where we are now? What preview did such terminology give that we don't need to be surprised as we go further into today's show to what has happened or what is happening within Buganda at the birth of this terminology? Can you go into detail what was birthed for Buganda? Like, what then were the repercussions behind the scenes that maybe we can start to see now for Buganda for all its aspirations, which is ultimately, of course, getting to govern its own self within and manage its affairs. How has Buganda Kontiko really drifted us further away from even that sentiment?
Okay. I desire, first of all, you must very much commend Mr. Charles Peter Mayiga for coining that kind of term. I actually hesitate to call it a term. It's more of a slogan. So it's
Oh, of course,
sloganeering
yes. That's true.
is very much as part of the symbolism probably today at Mango. And so the first, I can take you back at least as far as I can recall to the Kabaka's wedding, 1999, August
Mm,
27th. The Katikkiro then, which was Samogerere, came up with Ekinyegenyege. Ekinyegenyege is sort of an enthusiasm because
mm,
for a long time the Baganda had, you know, asked the Kabaka to give them the Nabagereka,
mm,
mother, you
mm,
know, and the Katikkiro was saying, okay, now he's showing us whom is going to marry, our new mother, so we
mm,
need to do something. So, ekinyegenyege, be enthusiastic towards the cause.
yeah.
And so their number. So you must give it up to him. You must give it to Mr. Mayiga
Oh, for
for
sure.
the courage, the creativity,
Mm,
the innovativeness in
mm,
coining some of these things. You will
mm.
hear Buganda Kontiko, you will hear Tofali, you will hear Chapa Mondalo, you will hear Eh? Eh?
All of them sound,
Eh?
all these slogans cost too much, yeah?
Oh, you have to give it to him. That's what I'm trying to
Of
tell
course, you have
you.
to give him the credit, but all of them are costing a fee. Chapa Mungalo,
I
Tafari.
think I think I'm being naughty here by saying you need to give it to him.
You have to.
I mean, some of it, most of these are actually hot air in a way, in a sense.
Mm,
I'm sorry to say that, but I mean, when you look into them, they
mm,
don't really quite have the kind of foundation that you respect an institution, an entity that has survived
mm,
thousands of years
of course.
to really rally on. But let
Mm,
briefly to you you could say it makes sense in a way
mm,
because it really means that at one point Buganda was at the summit
mm,
and lost a place at the summit.
mm.
The question would be who's occupying the summit now?
No, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Mm,
but you see, we had a Kabaka, even though the 1955 Buganda Agreement had made him a constitutional monarch,
mm,
much of the powers that he still wielded, everything else went on as before.
mm,
There wasn't much in terms of how the people understood him and how he carried on the affairs of his office
yeah.
and the organs under him, including the Luchiko, the Council of Ministers led by his Katikkiro.
Mm,
Nothing much pretty changed except in ink.
mm,
Because the 1955 agreement was sort of a departure from the 1900 agreement signed by his
yeah.
forefathers. Yeah. So
Mm,
a couple of things have changed over the years with the counties of Uganda, two of them, because Uganda at the time we got independence had 20 counties. So two of them, Uganda is returned to Bunyoro.
yeah.
Land was expropriated. The
Mm,
Kabaka ran into exile and died from there, was murdered from
mm,
there.
of course.
The princes of the drum, princes and
Mm,
princesses of the drum were exiled for a long time, including the present Kabaka Ronald Munamutebi II in London,
mm,
and they had to, struggle to make ends meet.
mm.
What the Irish call, uh, what's the term? So, um,
Um, I think we might be having a problem with our connection, but the producer is going to set us right back. So we'll be able again to hear from our guest today. Yeah, we will be able to hear from our guest today. We've just gotten just a little bit of a network problem. But before, of course, Council comes back. Okay, Council is back. Sorry, Council, that day we had a network issue. So we had a
oh,
little interruption. But you were reflecting on because we need to put this thing in its context, and I've realized I've been missing where it all links within Buganda's context. So we're talking about a state that not only has been decimated and broken apart once of all with the 1900 Buganda Agreement, as we know, that was also giving Buganda Maryland. So you were talking about that journey for Buganda and what was happening with Buganda, so, and now the new wave terminology or like the morale that Buganda itself needs to go on and, accrediting uh, people who have come up with this over time. I think that is where we were at with the conversation.
yes. Thank you for that refresh. Um, so. I was saying that the royal family, that's say the princesses and princes of the Dran, were living a life not fit for them. And Kabaka Mutebi in particular, while still living as an exile an exile in London, in the UK generally, uh, he saw double glazing. That's the term I was looking for. Double glazing, and which means literally selling glass pens. And he
Oh.
says he did not succeed. I think he sold one. And he says you had to be an Irishman to be able to sell double glazing in the UK. And the Kabaka was struggling to fend for himself, in terms of his livelihood. Um, and he ended up self-taught as a journalist and writing pieces here and there as a freelancer in various magazines and newspapers. So the organs of Uganda were all, torn apart,
In
uh,
shambles, really.
in shambles indeed. And the Bataka, who are the clan heads, tried to maintain the little that had remained. The palace
Mm,
was burnt. You know,
mm,
a number of people were killed within the palace. Those who had come to provide moral and indeed military support for the Kabaka
mm,
in case of the end before he ran into exile. I mean, we were not collecting taxes anymore. Uh,
yeah.
so you could look at a number of things and appreciate that
Mm,
had the 1966-67 crisis not occurred, we would
mm,
be far away, probably in the league like the Asian Tigers today. But
mm.
on the other hand, that did not happen to Buganda alone. It happened everywhere else in
Oh,
Uganda where cultural institutions, I mean, even the rest of Uganda suffered.
yeah.
Just like they say, once France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches a cold. So it was the
Mm,
case with Uganda too. Those who were
yeah.
happy that we had been desecrated, lo and behold, a few moments later, they too suffered a similar fate.
Mm,
And so
mm,
that's why I asked now who's at the summit? Because
mm,
in rebuilding Uganda, we need to identify who's occupying our place so that we can
mm,
retake that place, reoccupy that place. So it's a debate we can have on and on and on and on. But that is quite the
mm,
picture that we,
mm,
where we are, if I'm reading Mr. Maiga's mind correctly, is not where we are supposed to be. Probably we should be sending astronauts to the moon. We should be having Uganda Federal Investigation Bureau.
mm.
Uh, we should have been sophisticated in our, you know, policing because the Kabaka had a police.
It's funny you
Yeah,
say that, and
that's police
and I'm and
force.
I'm thinking, because with all of this, I think one thing runs through my mind. We haven't even gotten Buganda the primary principle of sovereignty. Shouldn't we get that one even first if
Precisely.
we want to even
Precisely.
participate at the summit?
Precisely. So where is our sovereignty? We lost our sovereignty. And some
Mm,
of us have not been very kind to Mr. Maiga insofar as the question of the
mm,
sovereignty of the people of Ghana is concerned.
mm.
Bwe tunamuva mwanyi terimba, you know,
Yeah, 'cause that is
the other
very
day,
key, because we've spoken about like institutions being destroyed and people being murdered and massacred, but in the middle of all that it's the sovereignty of a people. So and we continue to function as if we build all these institutions back, there will be a restoration of that sovereignty masked in the same system we're living in. It seems to be madness, because they say you cannot do, what is the word? I've forgotten the saying. If you do the wrong thing over and over again expecting different results, that is madness. But before we get into all of that, let's have a look at, Charles Mayiga's ceremony receiving the Damulula. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Yeah, the Damulula. I actually have to trust my Luganda, Damulula. And just out of curiosity, before we actually go into that video, because for many of us come from different, we come with different capacities of actually knowing how even governance within Buganda state works. So what is the Damulula? What does it stand for? And because it's a symbolism of sorts. Can you explain to us that symbolism before we head into that video?
All right. Well, Damla, for all intents and purposes, is a road cut from a special forest within the Sese Islands, where I originate from. There is a forest there called Lugo. So Damla is cut from there, and so I think specially made for the purposes of the office of the Katikkiro.
Okay.
The word Katikkiro means or has undertones or connotes so to burden someone with responsibilities.
Okutika.
Omuntu obuvunaanyizibwa.
Okay.
Kati kabaka kyekitikkiro. The kabaka is the supreme,
Okay.
of everything else. But because the kabaka alone cannot be able to discharge all his mandate, he delegates his authority, his powers to certain people, officials, those who form part of the cultural setup, the Bataka, and so on and so forth. And then
So
you
this
have
is where Buganda's
the political administration, which is headed by the Katikkiro. So the social organization of Uganda, after the Kabaka, is the Katikkiro. Okay, in certain respects, because that has changed over time. At some point, the Namasole was key. But because of political forces at play over the years, things have changed. So as of now, after the Kabaka, it is the Katikkiro, and then the other officers fall into place as well. So Damla is to assist in okulamulirako Ssaabasajja Kabaka. It's a symbol of authority.
Okay.
To have a share in the reign of Ssaabasajja Kabaka. And so, just like you have a mace for the speaker, or usually when the Queen is opening, doing the state opening of the UK Parliament, there is that mace made in gold that is carried before her as a symbol of the crown. In Buganda, similar to the crown, we have the namulondo, the throne, the throne. So the Kabaka, on his throne, delegates certain people to help him discharge his mandate. And one of those people is the Katikkiro, who receives the Damula as a recognition of that delegation of authority. And that Damla, by the way, when he receives it, there is a mock fight. That's to say, if anyone succeeds in actually taking it away, he loses the appointment immediately. And the Katikkiroship goes to the persons who have succeeded in taking away that Damla, as we shall indeed witness from the video.
Oh, okay. If the
Yeah.
producer could please play that video, and then we will come back after that.
9 a.m. and the entire Viri Palace courtyard is filled with Buganda loyalists who came to grace the official handover of the mace to the newly appointed Katikkiro, Charles Peter Mayiga. Some could not hide their excitement. They broke into dance and celebrations, and many witnessing this transition for the first time.
I'm so excited for having been one of the witnesses when the Kabaka, the King of Buganda, is giving him the Damla to the Katikkiro of Buganda.
For some, trees provided a vantage point. The ceremony was witnessed by several politicians and several government officials led by the Vice President Edward Sekandi. Kabaka Ronald Mwenda Mutebi, accompanied by the Nabagereka Sylvia Najinda, arrived amid deafening applause. Then the newly appointed Katikkiro arrived, amidst chanting from his clanmates in praise and support. As traditionally expected, the Kabaka asked the Katikkiro to officially accept the instrument of power commonly referred to as Damla amidst tight security.
Charles Peter Mayiga.
What proceeded was the struggle to protect the mace until it reached the Katikkiro's official residence known as Katikkiro. Here he performed the first ritual, serving his clanmates. It was here that he promised to ensure that all Buganda assets are returned, including this official residence.
Okubeera mu nnyumba yo kirungi naye ekisinga obukulu ng'omusingi gwayo munywevu awo nno ennyumba entujja kuginunula mu budde obutuufu.
Charles Peter Mayiga is the fourth Katikkiro under the reign of Kabaka Mutebi II, replacing engineer J.B. Walusimbi.
Okay, so in I think it was 2013 when he became Katikkiro.
May 2013, yes.
May 2013, he becomes the Katikkiro. I did not realize that by then Edward Sekandi was still serving in. It was a shock seeing him. Where he has gone with his politics, I wonder.
Yeah.
But in terms, so here we have Charles Mayiga talking about, as he said in the video, Omusingi is very important, and that is, foundation. So returning of Buganda's properties. So I think the question that I have, in this 9 tenure, what have we managed to get back primarily? What has managed to have been returned back that isn't a symbolism? What have we managed to get back that does not only act as a symbolism, but actually is for Buganda's foundational restoration?
Okay, I need to first of all put a footnote on the Damla that it is a 16th
Mm.
century uh,
Oh wow.
invention during the reign of Sekabaka, by then Kabaka Chabagu. Kabaka
Wow.
Chabagu has his tombs in
Mm.
Masajja off Sawala Road within Chadondo County. Sawala Road is just off Entebbe Road. So it's a 16th century innovation, and since
Mm.
then uh, it's been carried on forward to
Mm.
through various generations. So the present Damla, that Damla in particular, is approximately 100 or so years old. I'm
Oh, this
told.
one.
Yeah, that particular one, because I think along the way a number of them got lost, or some ran
Mm.
away with the others. We don't know quite what happened to them. So this
Was.
seems not to be the original uh, Damla, which was cut from Lugo.
Mm.
But once the other ones got lost, because of the significance of the forest Lugo in Sese
Mm.
Islands, another one was cut and
Mm.
made in that format. And Katikkiro Mayiga and Kanji, by the way, now the late, kept it for approximately how many years? About 27 years, almost 3 decades. Because following the crisis in 1966,
Okay.
he joined the Kabaka in exile. So you could be wondering
Mm.
where was the Doppler? And there is
Mm.
a story to that when you go to his ancestral home in Kalungu, Masaka Buddu.
Mm.
So I wanted to put that on. But to your question, so
Mm.
what
No,
have we
that
gained
that. Mm.
in real terms?
Mm.
Well, I would be the last to say that nothing completely.
Mm.
I want to recognize that some strides have been made
Of course.
in certain areas,
Mm.
and much more is left to be done. Gachari Mabaga.
Mm.
So, on some of those achievements, we could mention, for instance, the
Mm.
revitalization of the spirit of the people of Uganda to
Mm.
mobilize themselves towards the causes of their institution, the institution of the Kabakashi, because that is key in transforming the society and in correcting our politics within Uganda, but also within Uganda internally. So you have to
Yeah.
rally people around the symbol of their heritage, the Kabaka, who is at the
Mm.
apex. And
Mm.
you can transform that loyalty, that goodwill
Mm.
into a force to reckon with.
Mm.
But unfortunately, we've not succeeded in the latter part, in the latter
Yeah.
expectation. So we generally have the numbers at the Nkuka, which is a fun fair, usually at the end of
Mm.
the year, you know.
Mm.
But year after year, we've not transformed that force into
Mm. Something to be not to be reckoned with.
something to reckon with, yes, to indeed engage the powers that be as far as our sovereignty is concerned, which
Mm.
sovereignty comes with our dignity, with the respect of the human rights,
Mm.
with
Mm.
all sorts of aspects, our boundaries, our right. I mean, all
Yeah.
these kind of things. So there's been a weakness in that area. Then
Mm.
we have sort of restored some of the installations that were destroyed in the past,
Mm.
and try to open those that probably were not completed. So the Kasumi tomb is under restoration. I mean, the project manager has done a fantastic job, notwithstanding the pressures from Mengo, from UNESCO. You know, everyone has an interest, good or
Why would
bad.
UNESCO have an interest in the Kasubi tombs? That's
So,
interesting.
yeah, so there were certain things, wrong things that were signed, you know, that vested some interest in UNESCO, which we want to question, you know. So the people of Ghana might see the tombs being restored, but they need to understand that there is much at stake. How did we get to have the tombs? I mean, UNESCO have vested interests in the tombs.
Yeah.
It's problematic. It's really problematic. What is it that we were lacking that we needed to get from UNESCO in exchange for vested interests?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. Did we need what?
And
Food,
where was it used and utilized? Because
and
it didn't
yeah. I mean,
definitely.
who's in charge of the funds that
Mm,
are collected when tourists visit the site? Who
mm,
dictates what should be done? There was a fight over, for example, the wall unit that was constructed around the palace. See, Kasumi Tombs is just not just tombs; it's a palace because it
mm.
remains on the buried there. But the kings are also, are alive. The dead are not dead in African philosophy and theology.
Of course, always. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed, when the Kabaka visits the Kasumi tombs or any other tombs, the reigning
Mm,
Kabaka is called a prince within the precincts of the tombs.
mm. Okay. I think we've lost Counsel for a minute, but Counsel will be back with us. Yes, and he's back with us. As you were saying, Counsel. So I think then the question that I have is, because we seem to be finding ourselves, I want the producer to first show us of Charles Peter Mayiga once he became, from his ceremony, once he became the Katikkiro of Buganda. And what we see playing out is we get all the sentimental stuff back, the stuff that symbolizes something of a previous Buganda. But even what's even more detrimental and funny, because I must laugh at this point, because we're even getting like, when you say WRB and so on, we don't even have that, because how then does UNESCO have interest and foreign bodies still have interest in even these small sentimental things we get back? And where is the rallying for, not only where is the rallying for the crucial or key parts, but then how do we start to recognize within ourselves, especially people in Buganda state, and what Buganda needs to do for itself? Because if the things that signify something we don't even own to a certain extent still as a people, and we look at the contrast of why I asked the producer to show us some of those slides from the ceremony. We seem to be living in a symbolism of renewing Buganda, but Buganda hasn't been renewed in terms of we don't have the sovereignty.
Charles Peter Mayiga's appointment to serve as Katikkiro came on 12 May 2013 and handed Damla the instrument of power at Mengo Palace on the 29th of May 2013. He replaced Engineer John Baptist Walusimbi. The main role of the Katikkiro is to act on behalf of the Kabaka Mayiga vowed to restore the kingdom's glory, which he started with soliciting funds through a project called the Tafali. The yields of the Tafali are evident through projects like the reconstruction of the Kasubi tombs, partially destroyed by a fire in 2010, and completing a number of commercial buildings for the kingdom. As he marks his 8th, probably the last year as Katikkiro on Wednesday, Mayiga recounts the highlights of his journey. He says his most challenging year was 2020, which was darkened by the COVID-19 pandemic. Mayiga, however, feels the pandemic was a blessing in disguise, especially for the new working innovations.
There was a fear that the government would totally close, but it didn't happen. And continued serving the people of Buganda. Cabinet would sit, of course, using the Zoom technology. The kingdom companies and organizations continued in operations.
Mayiga says even with challenges that came with COVID-19, Buganda subjects continued to support the kingdom's cause.
They've participated in all kingdom programs. The Oluwalo practice of every week, sports, Masaza Cup, the Kabaka's birthday run, you remember, in November last year. And for the first time, all the kits that were made were sold out.
He says he's comfortable with the relationship between Mengu and the different political parties.
You know, we've had this electoral year, which has had a lot of challenges and heightened tensions. But everybody was welcome here in Bulange. All members of political parties were free to come, and they came, all of them. And I think that was important in the sense that if we didn't handle that matter the way we did, it could have escalated the tension in the kingdom and probably in the country.
And with every job come the challenges.
It's a very big challenge to balance the opposing political forces. But I think it only depicts that the kingdom has influence. Every political actor would like to see you aligning with him or her.
Before he became the kingdom's prime minister, Mayiga had served the kingdom in different capacities, the latest being Minister for Information and spokesperson for Buganda Kingdom. The Katikkiro serves 2 4-year terms, and it is yet to be seen if Mayiga's term will be extended or if Buganda will choose a successor. Solomon Kawesa, NTV.
So what I find so funny about this video, and in vein of what we're talking about today, in this video, the Katikkiro of Buganda right now said it is hard to balance all the opposing political forces, not knowing who to align with. And the first thing that comes to mind is, for us, would our priority not be to align ourselves with someone who's going to give us back our sovereignty? It seems more like that national politics has taken a bigger seat at the table, and everything we have is back. And you see what I'm saying? Like, even in
Yes.
his speech, it's more about balancing national politics without giving any space, any poise that he firmly stands with the politics in that we have as Buganda state vested in Uganda. So if we could please dive a little bit into his speech, the producers put on the screen. If we could have that one, because the one that is typed. So Mayiga does give this speech in the Luchiko. If we can look a little bit deeper into this and where Buganda is standing politically, it seems like we're standing national politics, and Buganda's politics is national politics now, of sorts.
Yeah. I appreciate where you, I mean, the kind of, in fact, I do share the sentiments, your sentiments in that regard. I find that unlike when he was still minister, he's still minister, indeed, but before his appointment to the Katikkiro, he was more firm on and he was more firm and resolved on Buganda's issues than when he became Katikkiro. I don't know where the timidity came from. I don't know what compromises were struck uh, before his appointment. I mean, these compromises could have been with the state. Whatever his fears are, they are contrary to the spirit and the aspirations, wishes of the people of Uganda, and interests as well too. Because you see, some of us do not sing the Uganda anthem for the sake of it, just for the sake of it. We
Of course.
take everyone seriously.
Mm.
That this country, Uganda, was long known before, time since time immemorial. King Two's reign about 1200. But before King Two, there were other reigns, other sort of say, dynasties, you know. So the kingdom of Uganda is thousands of years old, and it has
Yeah.
stood through thick and thin, and we cannot afford, to hold our hands at the back and pretend that everything is fine. That for some reason we have the negotiating, prowess to pursue and sort of caress and camouflage probably the machinery at the moment powers that
Sugarcoat.
be. We should. I mean, we we are inept in that area, and the best thing would have been to put our foot down on some of the issues. I mean, our struggle in between 1980 to 86 was to restore the kingdom to its full status, logical, I mean, logical status that makes meaning to us. That's why people went to the bush. That's why you had even a rebel group led by
Yeah.
Kaira, Dr. Kaira, fighting for federalism, for instance. You know, other Baganda who really went to specifically because they were angry that the position of their Kabaka, the integrity of the throne, had been thrown in disarray. So how do you tell us today that now 35 years on, we have to balance? There's nothing to balance, my friend. There is
He said it's
nothing.
hard to balance.
There is nothing to balance.
Yeah.
What is there to do is to reassert ourselves
Exactly.
on the questions of the day, political and otherwise. If we had done that, we wouldn't have agreements such as Vinci's, the other which has become problematic. I mean, Uganda would look for
Yeah.
our own market outside the borders of
Yeah.
Uganda, our own coffee farmers. I mean, the Kabaka
Oh,
would have to request for permission to travel the length and breadth of his kingdom. We wouldn't have to seek favors, get a motor car for the Kabaka, get a motor car for the Katikkiro, get a motor car for the
being
particular minister,
medicated by the
or
state.
I mean, our Kabaka was driving a Rolls Royce, was riding in a Rolls Royce. He had a Bentley or Bentleys. I will remember watching a video where these were buried in the ground. Some of them were sold, away. Some have been returned recently. I mean, that is the Buganda we were. So how come we've stooped so low as to keep going to the deal's house at Entebbe, seeking favors here, concluding funny agreements, such as the 2019 memorandum of agreement between the government of Uganda, the president of Uganda, representing government of Uganda, the Kabaka of Uganda, representing, the kingdom of Uganda. How did we come to conclude that agreement is problematic? The Ruchiko didn't have a say with that agreement. So Just juxtaposing that with inaugural speech. And this is where I find, parallels, and you get angry because in his inaugural speech, he sort of wants to focus us on these aspirations, trying to say, let us not, diminish in our resolve to fight for these aspirations, these interests.
Isn't it Buganda
But
Kontiko?
10 years down the road, you see the contrary. I mean, within that inaugural speech, he talks about and sort of to say a new way of doing things, a departure from the old ways. And so, in a sense, you sort of think he's saying we are offering a better alternative than our predecessor administrations within Buganda, but also a better alternative than the central government. So,
Oh, that's key to mention.
yes. So in there are things such as transparency, accountability, hard work, blah 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 blah. But where do you see that accountability? I've never seen an audited report
Before you
of the
actually even
people
get
in
into
Uganda.
accountability, because I wanted the producer to show us first what the paper that was written by Charles Mayiga. This was back when he was still, a law student, as a material that you had provided us to first take us there, and then because you're touching on the topic of accountability, I want us to wrap it in within the content that we have. So he writes this letter and is asking for accountability. A letter is asking for accountability. So if we can, if the producer can please put that on the screen, and then you could go into detail of these things, and then we can lead up to where a person who used to ask for accountability cannot even collect enough ground to give accountability to, the nation or the people that they happen to be serving. And before it is up on our screens, if you could talk a little bit more on the written statement that was written by the Katikkiro
Excuse
of
me.
Ghana on their official visit, and about the Kasubi tombs and accountability for the money that was coming out of, all the activities around the tombs themselves.
As the letter, probably the statement comes up, you see, desire.
Yeah.
I grew up in a churchman's home.
Mm,
So my old man was a churchman as well as a parish priest. There are a number of collections that are made towards the development of the parish. So if you're putting
mm,
up a church, a new church building, or any other project, maybe to replace windows, maybe to replace doors, or to get a better door. I mean, the Christians want to see that in its precise terms, not something that looks like what it ought to be. And you see, that's the
mm,
problem we've run into as Buganda, the trap that corruption is endemic
mm,
at Mengo. As much as Mengo can
mm,
stand there and, you know, condemn the central government for corruption. I mean,
mm,
a lot of money was collected from Etofali for revamping our
mm,
institutions and so forth. Personally, I know that it was unsustainable because you can't keep doing that. You need power to collect taxes. That is, a better scheme and a
yeah,
federal
and that
arrangement.
creates
In the start,
yeah. Then it's
you
not
know,
donations. You actually have to account for the taxes.
I mean, people get fatigued. People get
Mm,
fatigued,
mm,
and so on and so forth. But you see, the team that was collecting it officially fell apart. There were disagreements on
mm,
how contracts were shared or given out.
mm,
There was no bidding. Even
mm,
some ministers within the Kabaka's cabinet benefited from some of these contracts. Maida testifies that himself in his book called the Tofali. which I think,
He has another book.
according to the accountability. When I bought that book,
No.
I was first to take it had appendices that showed the accountability. Lo and behold, nothing. You see, so conflict developed amongst the team that was using to collect a tofali, over who got what contract, and
Yeah.
and it caused problems, and some people resigned, and the thing was becoming scandalous until the Kabaka called it off. You know, there are
Yeah.
many aspects. I mean, Masengere was completed, yes, but what was the quality of the tiles? What was the quality of the sinks, the mirrors, the taps? Very poor quality. But people had collected billions of money. And then you wake up one morning and said, oh, you see, the balance of the Yotofali, we use it to open BPS Telefania. Yeah? Telefina.
Telefina.
The institutional, the sort of to say the institutional television station. But how did we arrive at that decision? Who are the shareholders of Telefina?
I want us
Is Telefina,
to, I
in
know.
fact, in competition with the other TV stations? Because some of the programs that I see they relay have nothing to do with protecting our cultural integrity, our norms, our customs. I see half naked people. I see half naked videos on Telefina. I see, I tend to listen to some of the language used. It is unbecoming. It exceeds the bounds of decency. Expected of the
It's
Baganda as a decent,
branded. It's branded
you know.
Buganda TV network, but competing with Ugandan TV networks that are managed by the current regime.
I had a talk with one of the producers or managers of that station.
Mm,
I told him ABCD needs to change.
mm,
Don't be blinded by money, the adverts or the commercials that you will get. Look at how many generations you're destroying by accepting to be blinded by money.
mm.
We have something more to
Not on.
offer than what the others are offering. We have a niche, we have a comparative advantage over them. Why don't we utilize that? You know,
And
so that
council,
whole crap.
the mm, the
Please go
biggest
ahead.
irony, this
I
is
think
that
I'm getting it.
no, the irony is we should keep in mind this is a telefina funded by the people. Before the adverts and all that extra money, all this money came from within the people. So
Yes.
I just thought that that's very interesting that now it becomes commercialized and drifts away from that. Well,
I mean,
but
you see, in reassembling the Buganda organs, we were cash strapped in ensuring that the programs go ahead. And so a number of people who have Mango officials or officials of the kingdom were offering their services as volunteers. So, but most of the time spending it doing their own businesses. But a number of them, I understand, used the opportunity to write on the name of the institution and read the name of the Kabaka to gain personally from some of the projects. And that spirit has not died away. So when you want to check who owns Telefinder, indeed they might show you 51% belongs to the kingdom, the Kabaka of Buganda. But when you look into the other owners and how much they take away, I mean, you want to understand or examine how much at the end of the day the local man in Sese, where I come from, you know, gains from what is aired on Telefina. And it's a problem we need. I mean, the, the returns of the company, are they reflected in what is called a Mbalilira? Or that is given out, we have a Mbalilira here, which can mean both budget and accountability. So but when I look through the Mbalilira, does that reflect the actual returns of the company in terms of proceeds and so on and so forth? So the openness, the transparency, all these kind of things that have been long preached to us, tend to be, I think, hot air. It's like a priest who preaches, to his followers to drink water while he himself
And
is taking wine.
on that same topic, can you talk about the 2.9 billion that seems to go up in hot air as well and cause a lot of upheaval in 2019? In terms of if the producer can also show that on the screen, money that was collected for, of course, the Kasubi Tombs cash. How does this go up in the air and missing in a place whereby we were preached that better accountability? Or just
I mean,
accountability, because accountability doesn't have to be better. You have it or you don't.
I mean, desire. You see,
Mm,
part of the challenge we have is that we have aspirations for
mm,
certain things, but we are not ready to commit ourselves to work towards the realization
mm,
of those aspirations. Because I
okay.
expect whoever was in charge of Etofali to be questioned by the Luchiko Sector Committee, in charge of
Mm,
finance or in terms or in charge of accountability, or sort of to examine where did this money go, what exactly went amiss. Call the
mm,
Katikkiro. Please explain, how was this contract awarded?
mm,
What was the cause of the disagreement?
mm,
I mean, but we can't ask that of the central government, and we claim we want to
mm,
federal or federalism, and we're not ready to do the
mm,
same. And then when critics
mm,
raise these issues, your simple way of dealing with it is to throw them in jail, to disrespect them, to call them mad, to call them
mm,
names. I mean,
mm,
respond, don't react.
mm.
That's how we will
As-
manage to build Buganda out of consensus. I mean,
mm,
no one is perfect. We don't expect perfectionism at Mingo, but at
mm,
least we expect better. I had an opportunity
mm,
to serve there for about 2.5 years, and it shocked on me
mm,
what I saw in correspondence, what I had in meetings, and I was
mm,
saying all along I thought we were on the same course. How come these issues
mm,
seem to be so far away from the people that seem to be their foremost proponents? It's
mm,
discouraging. I was heartbroken. I mean, I led law students from the Law Development Center to go and pay a courtesy visit to the Katikkiro with those points in need,
mm.
as you mentioned,
Yeah.
hoping, perhaps naively that things were good.
Mm,
Lo and behold, what I discovered when I finally joined the civil service of the Kingdom of Buganda,
mm,
I was shocked to death, literally dumbstruck at what
mm,
I saw, what I heard, what I, followed, and
mm,
saying, imagine the people here are different thing, and we are here doing a different thing altogether. I mean,
yeah.
it's very heartbreaking. And you see the minister, who is the official spokesperson of the kingdom, cited a letter,
Mm,
where he's saying 6 billion so far has been spent in this day. and age, you're just going to present a letter that so much has been presented. Why don't you post the accountabilities on the website so that anyone anywhere in the world can download them and verify for themselves?
Yeah.
But you go ahead and have to write a whole book, a tofali, as an accountability. What a book! I
But how
mean,
about you come also
we're
speak?
gods.
What's very interesting about this book is when the money was asked for from the people of Buganda, they didn't write us a book then. So why now when giving us the accountability, a different method is used? I really feel like they're just trying to make sure not all of us get our hands on the details, tire us out before we read the first 5 pages. But in that regard, then there seems to be, it seems from this discussion that we're having, we're seeing there's two different Bugandas in all its aspects. There's the Buganda in our minds, from Echitiwecha Buganda, which when we sing, we see, we can feel and connect with. And then there's the Buganda we've been promised, that is in our parents' hearts, when Museveni came into power, this is what Buganda is going to be. And that promised Buganda is what we've found like our elders, still fighting for. And Katikkiro's come into power and promise us that same thing. But then there's the Buganda at Mengo. like
I hear
like
you.
where the actual administrative work is happening, and it's a whole different thing in that behind the scenes to what is actually being presented. Because I think right now what we're all riding on is that promised Buganda with the reassemblage of Buganda that's still connected to the Buganda that we can feel from Echitiwecha Buganda when we sing it and envision it, and we can build on that vision. But then now we have this huge hurdle right now in this day and age, the Buganda sitting right now in Mengo, the administrative work. And then we're bombarded with a lot of propaganda to praise it. Because I saw also in some of the materials, there is a book book called Mayiga, a transformational Katikkiro. I do not know the contents that lay in that book, but if you've read it, because if you've read it, what would you say? What are some of where do we get? I guess even it's not even about the book, but how has the propaganda hurt us as a people, and how do we start to reel ourselves back to Omulamwa, to the cause for our sovereignty? I guess that question is of high importance.
That's a very key question. Thank you, Desire, very much indeed. I've not read the book by Mr. Maiga's friend, colleague, and partner, Ule. I
Wow.
mean, what do you expect? I would love to read it, but your guess is as good as mine. It is another propagandist kind of approach to help him probably. What we're gonna use the word okugundira mu kifo, sort of to have longevity in office. And so I think I classify it under the same category as a Tofali book. I don't have high expectations of that book. I'm sure it talks about their struggles at university, his struggles in Chikuro, finding out how they start a company, and probably his way to the top. I mean, it's a repeated story in a sense. But the Buganda we desire. I mean, part of the question we ask is that those who call themselves representatives of Buganda, whom do they represent really? Because
Exactly. That's key.
insofar as I'm concerned, I did not elect any one of them to represent me. I
That
mean, we
is
have
so
the two
true. Now that you bring that up, we haven't. We haven't. been involved in any of their. They have all been appointments.
Yes. And insofar as I'm concerned, without fear of favor, all those in the Luchiko are representatives of Sabasajja Kabaka. Mind you, he has already in the Luchiko 6 special representatives, I think 6 or 8 or 9, I'm not so sure of the number now, but he has special representatives in the Luchiko, especially representing Sabasajja Kabaka. So then the others from the Bika, even from Chima clan, have never voted anyone. In the various professional bodies, medicine, law, engineering, business, etc., etc. I mean, I've not participated in the election. Even among the youth, it's not been adult. It's called adult human suffrage. Is it? What I might have forgotten the right connotation. But I mean, when are these elections organized? How many people in Buganda, in the various counties, near and far, are aware that these elections are going to take place? When is the democratic expression of the people? Because they have expressed this intention, this desire to be part and parcel of the processes of their institution. But their voice has been denied, it's been silenced in many respects. Are we going forward? If our forefathers in the 1920s, in the 1930s, in the 1940s could put their foot down to be heard, how about today when we have better technology to disseminate information, to challenge the powers that be? Are we growing forward as Uganda? Where did we lose our democratic path? I'm saying democratic not in the sense of Western democracy. I'm saying even within Uganda, pre-colonial Uganda, we had our democratic voice heard. And we had
like
some
participation
because of ignoring that voice.
Like the people are the kingdom. Our participation proactively to match our needs, because it's as of service to us at the end of the day, because it's within our service to the Kabaka that the kingdom surveils. It's supposed to be a balanced relationship. We serve the Kabakaship serves us. But we've been cut out of this exchange. I see.
Very much so. Very much so. But we expected to contribute a top part. We expected to contribute Oluwalo. Oluwalo, by the way, has a colonial background to it. You know? Because if you, it's community service. So I've read a law called the Luwalo law, passed by the Luchiko of Uganda during the reign of Kabaka Daudi Chua II. And so the idea is that everyone in the community should offer voluntary service for the well-being of the community. You know, cleaning up a well, you know, making sure that the roads are well taken care of, all sorts of community work. But if you were unable to do that, you would pay a certain tax or fee to be exempted. And then that would be used to, you know, develop other areas. Yeah, because it's going to the kingdom treasury. So to facilitate other programs indeed. And then you would have to show proof. They would give you a receipt of proof of payment as proof of payment. So, but we expected to give Luwalo. We expected to contribute Makula. You know, and on so many other things where we are mobilized to contribute. But then our voice is shut down
Mm.
when we
Oh, I
aspire
see.
to contribute ideas. They may not be the perfect
Mm.
ideas. They will, I mean, they may not be the best, but at least it's a starting point for discussion, for
Mm.
debate. Kutesa.
To even allow the process of debate or kutesa, like the
Yes.
fundamentals of reaching a decision is through discussion and thought, and but now we
Yes.
have it doesn't even hit those points. I Yeah, no, I'm with you on this. And
So
I guess then the question is
how come we
mm,
have tall orders? I mean, how come we have tall orders? How do we get to have that agreement? For example, if you get a chance to
mm,
read the 2013 agreement
mm,
between the president and Sabasaja Kabaka, and
mm,
why the Luchiko was bypassed, presumably where our representatives are and are supposed to discuss, debate it.
mm,
But they were bypassed. So what were the reasons
mm,
for the bypass? That means there is something problematic fundamentally with the agreement that they did not want the Luchiko to
yeah.
stampede, just like they had
Mm,
tested that with the regional tire system that had been introduced. So what would we have to do? We have to re-educate ourselves because we are in sort of a conundrum. It's a
mm,
colonial, ever
mm,
since our structures got disrupted.
mhm,
We have to re-educate ourselves with the material. We need to know how pre-colonial Uganda looked like
of course.
and sort out those things that we want to move with forward. We need
Mm,
to rally our fellow young people, the old, to stand up for themselves as well. It's not bad to
mm,
question authority. In 1945, in 1949, there were riots or protests within Buganda over cotton ginning,
mm,
over land, and Mutesa II, telling him that was
mm,
probably a, a puppet of the white protectorate government. And I think that
yeah.
is one of Kabaka Mutesa's wake up moments that enabled him to return triumphantly return as a hero in
Mm,
1955 following his exile, forced exile in 1953.
yeah.
We have to engage one another on programs such as these. Aba bataka bali kuki?
Mm,
Oba balya buli batunda butunzi. I mean,
mm,
we have to come to
and
terms that we are at crossroads and do something
mm,
about it. Buli omu alwanire waali.
mm, mm. And I think also
Yes.
one thing that I found very interesting is uh we haven't yet it's a nation whereby we've been pumped with so much propaganda to so many. It's especially when we talk our age group and the youth, because even in in these videos that we've been watching, you see you have a video and they are calling the Baganda who are in Buganda for because you got Buganda is a nation for a national ceremony. They're being referred to as loyalists. They are the Buganda loyalists, you know. So there is a
Instead
way
of
of,
citizens, or actually
you know,
natives.
yeah, they are natives, and that's that's the native nation, but also how it's addressed and thrown back to the world. And now we talked about BBC Telefina, so there is a lot to undo. Whereby when we're dealing with even the colonial question, it's now a question of pre-colonial. It's a question of going back to the pre-colonial, but also like the colonial period is still full warfare on Buganda, because if colonialism's full-on takeover would have been the total, not even because it still continues, but it's still full-on at warfare with all nations that existed at a certain point when we did reach contact with them. So we have to continuously communicate these things, and this is when things like this happen. whereby the norms and traditions are put aside. I had Katikkiro, pride himself in also our previous video that we watched on being organizing the Kabaka's marathon, which this year it didn't happen. Could we talk about whereby ceremonies and events are now not happening in Buganda? What is the reason that has, and also we don't even get communication, like I think it was last year when the Kabaka was sick and had to go and be flown out. We don't get communication on what's happening even in Mengo itself, but it's leaked on the internet at this point. Where do we stand? And I think we're going to go into the segment of what happened at the Kabaka's 63rd birthday party, where we see, as I said, we have a Buganda in our head politically, culturally, ethnically, that we have framed, and then there's the Buganda that's playing out right in front of our eyes. So if the producer can show us a video of what happened at the Kabaka's 63rd birthday party. You might think Buganda is not known for its drums. So, so let's get into this. We're now seeing an era whereby even Buganda itself. If you could talk a little bit more about this event, I'll let you dive into this and its symbolism and its representation of where we are at this moment in time.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that that happened, first of all. I also need to say, as a point of correction, that that was his 62nd birthday.
Okay.
Yeah, which had been the events earlier on in the day happened in Buloba, where a new school campus for Lubiri High School had been opened, and so a birthday dinner now at Bulange Mengo. I remember I attended the Luchiko session about a week or so later, and a number of people, the Bataka, the members of the Luchiko, were unamused by what had transpired, and they had been harsh in their correspondence to the Katikkiro regarding the happenings of that
Mm.
particular event that day. So, but the Katikkiro, brushed it aside, saying you should first at least appreciate what went right before you criticize us. And I couldn't believe
Diplomacy
my
is
ears.
running Mango. Diplomacy is running Mango.
Oh my God. That was very
It is
disturbing to hear.
diplomacy.
So when you look at the 9-year tenure, you sort of wonder where we headed.
Mm.
And we lost. How did we arrive at
At this point.
no dancing before the throne, the Namurondo?
Mm. Mm.
How did we arrive at that?
Mm.
Who was in charge of selecting who would perform before Namurondo? Don't we have standards? I
Practically,
mean,
that's what it's symbolizing.
I beg your pardon?
I was just saying that basically, even the occurrence of such an event is symbolizing this is bonabatwale. Like there's no standards, there's no expectation for Akabaka's birthday. Like it's not been put kudala on a certain ladder that is
Oh,
supposed to go like this.
hmm.
That doesn't exist.
It's absurd. I really, I'm really frustrated by what happened at the time. It still comes back to mind, and with
Mm,
emotions. I hope I don't wear my heart on the sleeve, but it was disappointing. But
mm,
you can see the trend.
mm,
So we start with Shiba because where you see the
mm,
Katikkiro dancing, that is Omulangira Wasajja's wedding to Marion, Miss Marion
mm,
Nanja. Sometime I think
mm.
around 2014 or 2013, maybe
Mm,
earlier on. Maybe because it was not yet Katikkiro, it was Master of
okay.
Ceremonies. So that must have been around early 2013
Mm,
or late 2012. I'm not quite sure
mm,
about the date. So, but
mm.
you can see the groovy.
It's enjoying
It's not
life.
bad to get groovy and all, but you see, the rank and file should dictate how you behave in public.
Mm,
Um, and then we, over time, I mean, the Kabaka had been having a number of people entertaining him, but they were respectful, at least in their dress code, in their messages. But over
mm,
time, things started going haywire, and
mm,
we found them enjoyable. I mean, some of the people in the picture there are known for harassing women sexually, uh,
mm,
poking money into their breasts
mm,
simply because they are millionaires, they are tycoons, so-called tycoons, and they feel that they have
yeah.
the right to do this. So these are the same people who finance these kind of parties, and
Mm,
probably feel entitled to invite anyone to entertain the Namulondo, and it is
mm,
absurd. But absurd as it may be,
mm,
we think that in rebuilding Buganda for the future, we have a lot of
mm.
work cut out for us.
Of
Um,
course.
in terms of literature we produce, in terms of the music we produce. Today, when you listen to any local radio, especially
Mm,
the ones in Uganda, there is a
mm,
lot of sexual innuendo in the
mm.
music, in the skits, in the programming, on
The
television,
comedy,
and
everything.
It's incredible, awfully incredible. And I think we need to re-engage ourselves because you see, it's one thing for Sasha Kabaka to sit on the Namurondo, for instance, and say, you know, Wangwa neno tubukume, kume ekitiibwa kyaffe twogere olulimi nefaanana bwe and then the next day you see a princess slaying on the beach half naked. You know, members of the royal family who cannot speak their mother tongue very well. I said it runs us into problems, such as the picture now you're seeing on the screen. A particular Nalinya was abused by the kind of approach Katikkiro Mayiga was taking, Katikkiro in quotes, or inverted
Well,
commas.
he warned us all. He said, "Enenkola mpia."
Omulembe omujja. Enkola y'omulembe omujja.
Omulembe omupya. Buganda
So that is
Kontiko.
omulembe
So
omujja.
Omulembe Omujja. So I think like as we wrap this up, if we can talk about this, because this is what people seem to miss sometimes. Because some, like when I also first got into trying to look back at heritages and our history and for how long we've existed. Because I used to sing at Chitiwecha Chabuganda in when I was in primary school at home, but I didn't understand it or hold the strong sentiment that I have now, having revised that this is a nation. But I guess what I want people to understand, because because first of all we have Buganda in Uganda, and then in Uganda's politics you then have a phase of women should not wear miniskirts, because and a whole political thing around it, where a whole politics is built around it, and it's like women should not wear miniskirts, and you have members of parliament blaming the rape cases on how women dress. So then you have a movement that is inspired by this, which is, of course, everyone should wear how they want to wear, but then this brings a whole wave. This wasn't only Uganda, even in Kenya, where we now have women wearing, a bit shorter skirts, but with that then comes already the hypersexualization of women's bodies, which then also feeds a lot of money into the sex trafficking, and we have a lot of the upsurgence of selling women's bodies, which of course is heavily rooted in our economic system, if we're to be honest, because this is the sexual industry is a huge source of income to the economy. So this is also encouraged by the kind of economy we have. But then now you look at people wearing dresses this short and shorts this short at the Kabaka's birthday. And then I want you to talk about, I'm giving all this context so that we can slightly touch on one last aspect before we close the show. The notion that our forms of governance and sovereignty are embedded within not only an ideology, but also an ideology that has been grown over time of how we're supposed to behave as people, not a hindrance to our existence or how we want to live, but the margin of because we've talked a lot about the political standings and Mengo and administration and administrative powers they be that are in part of the political realm, but then you have this other aspect of the cultural and preservation, because there's always this argument, especially when with people who have grown up in African cultures and our elders and now our generation, where we believe we should wear what we want, but there's this idea of why women used to cover up, but that's not the point that I'm trying to draw at. It's neither about how women dress or how they choose to dress, but I'm trying to talk about, or us to wrap into this conversation, that there is a moral code of ethics that comes embedded prior to the political systems in the form of governance. And even when we fail to do small things, such as just being respectful, because people are not telling you don't wear a short dress. They're saying when you come here, but when you're behind closed doors in your home, you can do whatever you please. But when we're at a social gathering, we expect all of us to present ourselves a certain way. So if you could please touch on that idea, that on that notion that there is a mode of ethics that has nothing to do with the politics we're dealing now, that the colonial institutional politics, which is what's happening at Mengo, the political. So we have to merge a certain work frame that has been ignored, or an ideology that has been casted away, where we're not even meeting the small things, just like Okwesamwe Chitiwa, which is at an individual level and must radiate communally. We're not doing those. How are we going to do the big things like accountability in a then heavily politicized, systematically draining institution that is being it's like the volcano at Mengo.
I desire, first of all, I am very much, fascinated by your outlook, your perception of things, and be able to get this strand, pull it here, pull it there. It's fascinating because it all comes together. Indeed, as you say, I mean, what we do in our privacy, may not be subjected to the moral code. But the forces of capitalism have influenced a lot of our social systems as we knew them. What we first witnessed was unheard of. In fact, in the olden days, I'm sure all of those would have gone with spears in their backs. And their clan members, including their clan leader or clan head, would have to pay a fine or mutango, and probably certain rituals would have to be done to cleanse the location where this happened, and so on and so forth. So the expectation is natural everywhere in the world, even in the West, where we usually blame, which we usually blame for having morally degenerated. You're still expected to, when you're entering appearance at Buckingham Palace, even when the Queen is inviting you just for tea, there's this whole cocktail or morning suit that men wear, and the ladies all turning up in flashy hats and dresses and so on and so forth. There is still a standard code of ethics that you need to apply yourself to, that you need to embrace. And so that's really partly the part of the challenge, that we've started to consume everything that has been thrown to
That's
us.
key. Say that again. Yeah. No, you
Yeah,
said
that has
something
been
that's
thrown
very
at
key.
us.
We consume everything. No, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, and yet our forefathers would sieve. I mean, look, Mutesa II said, "Yes, I need protection of my kingdom from my enemies." Already there were legends regarding where the enemy would come from the east, which was considered to be the back door of Buganda. So that generally Busoga, or the eastern side of Uganda, was considered a back door. So whoever came through that back door did not quite survive, and we see that in Mwanga's time, Mutesa's successor, Mutesa the first successor. But Mutesa was also precise. He said, whoever you bring to evangelize my country must be a practical Christian. Will teach my people to read and write, to make furniture, get practical skills to develop my country. And he continued playing all these parties at his court. But there are certain things he never entertained in his court. Regardless of what superiority complex, the powers that be, or the representation of those powers, you could not walk with your back against the Kabaka. Whatever the reasons. But what I'm trying to say, there was a social order morally accepted by all. That's not to say that the Baganda may not have satisfied with some of the administrative policies within Mutesa's reign or the other kings' reigns, but at least they knew how to conduct themselves before a Kabaka's court, before the Katikkiro's court, before Saza's court, and so on and so forth, back to the family. And if you went off, you knew exactly what to do. So we need to be careful as Ugandans, as the people of Uganda, and indeed as Africans in general, are known to accept everything that is thrown at us. We need to re-examine some of these things. How did we get here? What was our way of life? How come we got so easily convinced that ours was bad, evil, and so on and so forth? Barbaric? Wasn't really there anything good about our social systems? How can we improve them, so that they remain relevant in the years to come? And so on and so forth. Because our forefathers were wearing skins, then transition to backcloth, then to linen. We've been a society of progress, but that progress has been for the better. That's what we've desired. In as much as we've been overtaken by circumstances, by people who ill wish us, and so on and so forth, sort of. So there is a lot at stake, and the earlier we wake up, the better. I personally, I very much would love to see my wife revealing some skin, but not to everybody. As a man, my attraction to her is through my eyes. I need to be interested enough with what I see. But I should be scared to death if every man around me is seeing the same thing. What is reserved for me? I think it will be disrespect. And that comes all with, do we understand the Kabaka? The significance of the office of the Kabaka? Do we understand the significance of the office of the Namulondo? The Namulondo itself. I don't know whether you've watched The Crown. The Crown. But have you watched The Crown? It's a series.
No, I haven't.
About the British monarchy.
Oh, yeah. I haven't. But I know what you speak of.
Yeah. And so, so when we do this kind of stuff, and then because the Kabakas once mandated the Luchiko to do everything possible within its powers to stop trafficking young women to the UAE for all those kind of things. But just look, this happened after that kind of injunction or remark, or it's amazing.
No, it's
amazing how we fail to realize these things.
Yeah. The onus is on us, as you say, to re-educate ourselves on those specificities, because at the end of the day, Buganda has lived so long, has existed in time memorial, Like it's older than all these nations that we all hail to, you know, like the United States or even all these nations that exist now in the form of the UK, in the form of Buganda has always been there. So as we wrap up our show, I would like you to please now, you know, as we wrap up, to give us like kind of a summary of of uh, of of the 9 year tenure, and also my last question will be, uh, is Katikkiro Mayiga going to remain the Katikkiro, and for how long? Do we see this playing out? Because that's also a question I have. How long can this go on? Is it going to be us who have to step in? Will it be, you know, someone from Mango who steps in? Who is going to stop this madness? Because we all know it is. We all have come to an agreement that it has. What was it? Was it last year? There was a video of someone seated on the Namurondo. But the one in,
At Nagalagudo. At
yeah,
Nagalagudo, yes.
you know,
Yes.
there has been constant shaming, and it's kind of like the breaking of energy of the morale that then was lifted, that Buganda would be put to Kontiko, only for that morale to be drained and broken. So as we conclude to, you know, kind of look at that and what is the futurity of this madness.
Well, I have warned Stanley
Mm,
Katikkiro Mayiga when he chose to conceal information about Sabsaja Kawaka's health.
mm,
And my remark in a written statement was that let him not think that the Baganda have long forgotten uh,
mm,
their duty to
mm,
rise up against
mm,
whoever tends to deride, desecrate
mm,
their aspirations, their dignity, but
mm,
more so, the symbol of their heritage is being Sabsaja Kabaka.
mm,
And I reminded him that they might as well adopt the approaches in 1945 I, against one of his predecessors, Martin Luther and Sibira.
mm,
You know, he was shot dead
mm,
at the steps of Namireme Cathedral, just
mm,
outside the steps of Namireme Cathedral,
mm.
one morning. And I'm not calling for assassination of Katikkiro Mayiga at all. No, 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 not at all.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just warning him that it can get
Mm,
to that
mm,
if we do not take care. Now, secondly, my general outlook and overview indeed of the 9 year tenure
mm.
is what I term as the Aga Khanization of Buganda.
Meaning,
That seems to be the policy course of
mm,
the present administration.
mm,
We are after the money.
mm,
So we will lease out the palace
mm,
under the guise of development of
mm,
idle land. Yet we are rewarding ourselves for the leases.
mm,
And at this moment, I very much want to applaud Mrs. Joyce Mpanga, who stood
mm,
up sternly against the Katikkiro during one Luchiko session. I attended that Luchiko session, and she reprimanded the Katikkiro for being so selfish in that
mm,
regard, asking him to think about the future generations. Because the Kabaka
mm.
ship is not going to stop with Kabaka Mutebi. Kabaka
It's
Mutebi
gonna
is a
continue.
successor to previous Kabakas, and he too
Mm,
will be succeeded by other Kabakas. So we need to
mm,
think about them too. So the
mm,
organization of Uganda has really taken us into a mode of trying to do everything possible so long as we get some money to
mm,
survive. But you wonder what happened to Ketu Telecom Do we have an explanation? It was lodged in, all excitement at the Nkuka sometime, I think in 2010 or 11, I'm not so quite sure. There is a Dobozi, which was a Luganda newspaper. What happened to CBS accountabilities and so on and so forth. The BBS in Ngule, Sabuni, I think Sabuni is called Dume. There is a particular brand of bar soap called Dume. And also other ventures we've gotten into. Some have failed in the past, long before Mr. Mayiga became Katikkiro. So what has happened to those? When do we get to hear that Mengo is accountable? Aren't we asking too much of Mengo? So we have to stand up ourselves and challenge them. I mean, in 1945 or 1949, the Baganda camped at the Kabaka's Lake in Deba for days, seeking the Kabaka, and made their demands known to him because they were tired of exploitation by the Europeans and the Indians. And at this moment, I want to recommend a book to you by Professor Ranga Lunyigo, which is written the Indian colony, I think from 1894 to 1972, were expelled by Idi Amin. So the people of Uganda stood up. They were not as educated or schooled. I want to use the word educated sparingly. But they were not as schooled as we are today. They don't have much access to technology as we do today. They were not as many as we are today. How come they were resilient in their efforts to see a better Buganda? To see that the security of the throne is indeed real, that their questions on land are answered, that their aspirations for service, good public service through a federal system of government is realized and maintained and preserved, that their unity is unrivaled, that their territory cannot be, the integrity of their territory cannot be played about with. We can't simply sing Ethonga Thema Thonga and we can't keep sloganeering. We can't keep doing the propaganda. We can't keep being literally childish in our approaches, towards the realization of our aspirations, our interests, our wishes as a people. And we need this known even to the rest of the communities we were forcefully adjoined with. That this is where we stand. We are not apologetic about our stand.
Yeah,
And
no, I
to
hear
them.
that.
Yeah.
I hear that.
I thank you.
I think that us standing in that, thank you for that. And at the end of the day, if we remain truthful and stand in the power of our sovereign power and reassert ourselves, other communities are yearning for the same opportunity. So all I want to say as we close off is we're not the only ones trying to do this. We might be the loudest in to this realization, but that's also because proportionally Buganda is the biggest and the most
Yes.
populated. So you look at it proportionally, and it makes sense that we're the loudest and we're the most visible to be seen, but we also acknowledge that all the communities surrounding us have the same aspiration, because as you said when we began this show, when the desecration of kingdoms began and they laughed at Buganda, the sorrow waved on to all other nations that existed. So we also recognize that when we have these aspirations to reinstall the visionary the visions of our ancestors, we're also doing the same for those to come after us, for our descendants. We reckon that we're not the only ones, and we have to do it unapologetically, and we hope that everyone else would join and do it unapologetically, because when we do for Buganda, we do for Uganda. So, but
Yes.
you said enough with slogans. So I leave the slogans for the
I mean,
Mengonians. And
I, I mean, look,
no, I was
um,
just joking. I was just
look,
joking. But
Buganda might have the
mm,
numbers, as we've noted in the
mm,
beginning, but
mm.
we've failed to convert those numbers into a force to reckon with,
You said
at
that as
least in the
well.
mining.
Into a force to be reckoned with. We're yet to do that
And
part.
yeah, and you see, we need to strategically think about how
Mm,
we turn our our simple majority, because it's not the kind of majority that can overturn, for example, an election if it was
mm,
ever conducted. Yes, we could
mm.
be the highest population amongst all the other natives, but that kind of population is yet to have the potential
Mm.
to overturn at least events in a free and fair election if it is ever conducted. So we have to think
Oh,
about
but
other ways
but
of.
Council, that was the question. Are we even, when we do for Buganda, are we going to do a Mayiga and balance national politics? Or are
No,
we
no, no,
even,
no,
even
no, 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 no.
yeah,
I am personally,
no,
I don't buy that
I
balancing
don't buy the
kind
balance.
of
So
stuff. Yeah.
I guess when we look at our population, we should not. I think this is just my simple-mindedness of where we stand. We should stand at a standpoint whereby if we can organize ourselves to really advocate for what we really want, it should
Mm.
have a domino effect
Mm.
within the whole nation. And it doesn't have to
Mm.
be an election. That's where we need to change. We need not to go from
Precisely.
national politics, but to go from Buganda
Yes.
politics towards national
Yes.
politics.
Yes.
But that will be us for today, as we have to go today, but this is a discussion that needs to be continued, and we need to break it down in so many ways. Like today we look at the Katikkiro, maybe tomorrow we'll look at something else, in Buganda that has gone array and has led us to where we are at now, and where we can start organizing ourselves. But I want to thank you so much for being with us here today, for going through this. And for our viewers, next on we're gonna have this and that with Mrs. Wamala and Omulangira Chimbugwe as well. You viewers as well. Thank you for being here. As always, the more we spread this message, the farther it's gonna go. Take the principle of teach one to teach 10. Each of us go teach 5 other people, your 5 close people, and let's keep having these conversations because they are key not only to what we want, but to just being free. So, Jonathan, if you could say bye to the viewers as well, and yeah.
Thank you very much for hosting me once again. It's been a pleasure, really, to join you and all viewers, listeners, indeed, on Zanji.
Mm,
My maiden appearance has been great. Um, I look forward to returning again. Thank you for staying with us. I pray that what we've so far talked about can continue in the other fora. Um, I mean, those who
mm,
can write, those who can,
mm,
you know, compose poems, songs, please go ahead. Those who can, you know, sponsor, in terms of material support, financial support, please go ahead. It's a big, big, big kind of challenge we have ahead of us
mm,
on our plate. I pray that the Lord keeps you, grants you peace of mind, in as much as the circumstances surrounding us are not the best, and gives you the resilience to stand through the tide and leave a legacy that generations that will come long after you will be proud of to look up to. I thank you. Good morning to those in different parts of the world. Good evening, good night to everyone else who may not be fit to be told good morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the viewers. And that will be us until next week. We'll be back with a different topic. We'll be back. It will be again me and Counsel Jonathan Mwesigwa. So please make sure to tune in. And until next week, hope that you all keep safe until we meet again.